Training is like building a sandcastle. Every grain of sand is important, even if you can't see them all. Hey guys, Coach Nate here from The Run Experience. Today we're talking about how to deal with running injuries. We have a very special guest, Olympic runner Alexi Pappas here. She is going to share with us her battle to get back into running after a 2017 hamstring injury. She's going to share a little bit her story. I'm sure we'll get some good quotes in there, as well as some helpful tips.
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. So, Alexi, running injuries aren't just physically challenging on runners, they can really be mentally challenging too. Take us back to, 2016, 2017 when you started to deal with your hamstring and the mental aspect that you were experiencing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of injuries start from, they're called a stress injury for a reason, and there's stress maybe on the body, but also on the mind. And nobody told me, but after you compete in the Olympics, it's like such a high, and sometimes there's like this dip or transition afterwards. And I was transitioning to a new event after that, trying to move up to the marathon. I was trying to change where I lived, and there were a lot of changes, and my body I was still trying to compete and run the same mileage that I was running, even though the stresses in my life were not the same. And
so it felt like you were adding additional stresses, but weren't removing stress from other areas.
Yes. So I remember an 120-mile week, which is like a really high for me, really, really high. And it was during a week when I probably should have been running 50 miles based on what the mental stresses that I had. And so my hamstring happens to be the weakest link in my body, and it went first, and it spoke when I couldn't give it the attention or the rest that it needed.
How did that affect your expectations for the year? Because potentially you had plans for competition or for training, you had done maybe some goal setting at some point, and all of a sudden you have this unexpected element brought in that you have to deal with.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing was eventually learning to take off my deadlines, off my plate. So when you have these races, even if it's a race 6 months away, that's still a lot of pressure on yourself. So if you do have a sidelining injury, I think the best thing to do is to simply take off the deadlines. And so for me, that meant actually delaying my debut marathon by a whole year. But once I did that, I remember the day I felt like an invisible backpack had been taken off my back, because I could focus on healing and my overall long-term health, and not this kind of artificial self-imposed timeline.
I love that, because there really is always another race, another weekend, or that same race will be there next year.
Totally.
Yeah, that's great. So it's often said when we deal with those setbacks, they're never fun at the time, but we come out the other end a little more seasoned and experienced. What was that seasoning for you? What did you really gain from that hamstring injury?
So for me, I'm very stubborn, and I'm determined to make it so that the universe is like rooting for me. And I think when you're in the middle of an injury, you have to focus on healing. Like, that's the number one goal. But when other opportunities come up during that time, taking them, I think, is a good thing. For me, I took opportunities to shoot a movie at the Winter Olympics, and other things in my life blossomed. And then after the injury was over, when I was healed, I rewrote how I felt about that period of time. So even though the day to day was really challenging, today I almost look back on that time fondly, because I know that my growth is huge because of that time, creatively, but also athletically. And so I think it's really important to stay on your own team and rewrite how you look at that period of time later, and almost look for opportunities to make it have been the best thing that could have happened to you.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were able to shift into other areas that brought you a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Whereas I know with a lot of runners and running in general, we get so excited about this, and that if it's taken away from us, we feel like that kid who is stuck inside a recess watching all their friends play outside.
Yeah.
But you didn't necessarily, or maybe you felt that way, but you were able to come up with strategies to minimize that.
Yeah, I just like was very stubborn about like making the most of that time, and that includes healing in a way where I believe that my body is more capable now than it was before that injury. So I believe that the tools that I learned and the rehab has now become prehab, and that prehab, which is like, you know, maybe the same exercises I was doing to heal my hamstring, I feel is actually making it stronger than it was before it was injured. And so whether that's true or not, I believe it, and running is such a mental sport that whatever I believe is helping me.
I like it. Well, that's such a good segue for our next clip, because I really want to get into some of those pieces that you're doing now in terms of your strength and your cross training and how you are making sure that hamstring injury doesn't come back.
Okay. So another fun UCAN story is one time we left overnight a bunch of my UCAN bars in the car, and I live in a place where there are lots of bears, and we woke up in the morning and all of the bars had been eaten by this bear. And so it just goes to show you that these UCAN bars are really desirable to even the animal population.
Bet that bear didn't even need to hibernate that winter. Who knows? Well, thank you to UCAN again for bringing Alexi onto our channel and for sponsoring this video. They've got a special offer for you, so you can try some of the bear's favorite UCAN products. If you click the link below in the description, you'll get the whole, slew of UCAN products. So get on it, click that link down below, and let's get back into our injury tips. So I thought we could use a nice Alexi quote here to bring us into our strength and cross training. And something we were able to pull online was, quote, "Training is like building a sandcastle. Every grain of sand is important, even if you can't see them all." Yes,
I think the invisible grains of sand are the ones that I'm most proud of. And I think we can all be most proud of those. When you look at a sandcastle, I think the seashells are really, maybe those are your 400-meter repeats and the very glamorous things that are very important. But the sand grains that you can't see are your continued, what I call prehab exercises, which are for my hamstring, hamstring curls and things, that allow my hamstring to like recover every day, because I know that can be my weakest link. And so that's really what that quote refers to, is that all of these things are important. And then zooming out, your easy day is just as important as your long run, and to take that really seriously and be proud of yourself on the off day even is a strength.
Because it's not just about celebrating the big epic workouts that especially sometimes we see online. It's just all the work that's not exciting, that no one sees, that are those invisible grains that are so good. So maybe we can get specific on what some of those invisible grains are. We just watched you do some strength training today after a hard run session. What was like the feel that you were trying to get for all the exercises?
Yeah, so after a really hard workout, you can sit in a chair for the rest of the day, or you can drive in a car, and those things are just continuing to keep your body closed. And so my goal today with my strength was to open up, so to really like be moving in a way that was opposite of how I look right now, sitting in a chair, and also to remind the muscles to restore themselves. So for my hamstring in particular, the hamstring curl, like when you're concentrically pulling it, that's strength and that's fine, but the most important part is the eccentric, which is when you're letting it go.
That lower and that lengthening.
Yeah, and that's when your tendons repair and lengthen, and that's counter to what I was doing in my mile repeats today. And so that's the goal. But with lifting, I think just like with training, there's I don't always like follow my plan exactly. I know on any given day, like I don't want to break too much of a sweat in the weight room. I just sweated a lot. I want to feel complete. I want to feel like my day has been bookended by it, and that's really day to day,
Yeah.
It's personal.
That's really good. And for cross training, because sometimes cross training and strength, there's like an overlap, but not quite the same. Do you have any cross training exercises that you've liked, or did you find yourself doing, especially when you were coping and you couldn't run as much as you wanted to from the hamstring injury?
Yeah, well, I think when you are injured, you do what you can. So, and also recognize. So for me, I could bike, I could hike, I could start to do some uphill walking and striding, and that really helped strengthen it.
Yeah, which at 8,000 feet is no joke.
It's strenuous, but also knowing that willpower is really important. And for me, that cycling didn't give me the same joy that running did, and at first I wondered, like, why am I so drained every day? Like, I still feel very lucky to be moving, and some people, cycling is their favorite thing in the world. For me, it was not my favorite thing in the world, and I think recognizing that, yes, this is good for me, but it's also draining to my willpower, gave me perspective to not resent myself during that time. So if a cross training doesn't make you happy, even if it's good for you, you've got to balance it out with something that does boost your willpower. So for me, cooking really helps. And so I was doing a lot of cooking during that time. And so I'm always coming back to that, like, kindness thing, but we know how to work hard. We don't always know how to be proud of ourselves.
So Alexi, I think I've seen you take down 3 of these bottles in the time that we've been filming this thing, which is probably a nice segue to talk about nutrition and hydration and how that plays a role in our bodies, and especially getting out of injury.
Yeah, so when I was injured, I remember, like, there were definitely days where I was so focused on, like, the pain in my body that I forgot to take into account all the other things, like sleep and nutrition, that are so important when you are healthy. And I think it is like a box you must tick every day. Like, you must try to sleep, and you must try to give your body the best chance at showing up the next day feeling okay. And to give your body the best chance is to fuel it properly.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because when runners are in training, they can get very focused on their nutrition. It's hard workout, I'm going to treat myself really well.
Yeah.
But when runners are off the wagon from running, they sometimes fall off the wagon nutrition as well.
Right. And that's the time to, like, I always say, like, queenie yourself, like, treat yourself like a queen, particularly when you're injured. Take the time to prepare something that feels thoughtful and feels like it's on the same page as your efforts to be healthy as a, body or whatever,
I love it.
That makes sense.
That's I'm following.
Yeah.
I'm totally following.
I almost just spilled everything on myself.
There we go.
And if you are curious about how I stay healthy with my fuel, click the link below to get a special deal.
That's right. It is our little TRE special UCAN packet. Thanks to UCAN for making this all possible. Of course, guys, if you like this video, hit that like button just below the video. That really helps other runners find this thing. Any comments for Alexi or for us, drop those down below. And of course, subscribe to our channel. We got new videos coming out each and every week. We want you to see them. We want you to be running better. We're going to keep filming. We'll see you in the next one.